Nisei veterans sacrifice in great numbers.
I didn't know the personal stories. That's what I want to take to students.
That we share a common humanity, aspirations and goals.
I've learned so many stories that you don't see in textbooks.
This workshop has opened the door for even more investigation, more research, more knowledge.
Hidden Histories of World War II Teachers Workshop explored the often untold experiences of the Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans living in Hawaii during World War II.
We're really asking you folks to be our guinea pigs. Some of this stuff is driving new curriculum.
Figuring out how we take these stories that are essentially 80 years old and making them relevant and meaningful for the young people that you're touching every day in your classrooms.
As we get further and further away from having a direct connection to World War II,
the Hawaiian boys gave the combat team a motto: go for broke.
our students will need to have those kind of historical resources to give them an understanding of the war and especially what happened here in Hawaii.
Teachers from Oahu, Kauai, and Molokai attended this 5-day training, which encompassed a broad range of subjects.
U.S. sailors on shore leave and the impact presence of sailors had in Hawaii from the time of early visits through World War II.
We're really lucky in that librarians have gone through every single photo and assigned it one or more subject terms. And the Japanese American veterans collections have diaries and journals of soldiers, photos, oral history, transcripts, scrapbooks, and audio-visual items. And I'm going to show you how to navigate this.
Hi, I'm Betsy. What's your name?
The Institute started off with a tour of Okage-sama De, the permanent exhibit of the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii.
There are 13 values here: gamang, perseverance, gambare, don't give up.
Docents shared the experiences of Japanese migration to Hawaii.
The women had to often rip up their kimonos and make up plantation outfits.
The creation of the Japanese American community in Hawaii.
My dad's oldest brother was a Luna, one of the few Japanese workers that became a Luna.
And the eventual formation of the 100th Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team.
Any of these names you remember? Sparky Matsunaga down in Norway did so much for us.
The group visited the Department of Justice incarceration camp, Honolulu. Amidst the overgrown foliage, they heard the narratives of the Japanese Americans incarcerated at that camp.
I had no idea of the Japanese story. So for me, I have this greater appreciation of the Japanese part of the history here in Hawaii.
And I wish that I could take these people that actually told the stories and bring them into the classrooms so that way we don't continue making these same mistakes.
That afternoon, the teachers visited Pearl Harbor. How many of you did that? Looked up into the sky, saw the beautiful blue sky, beautiful white clouds, and imagined a sky full of airplanes attacking? I think we all did. The teachers not only heard about the military incidents of that day, but also the personal experiences of civilians living nearby.
I said, this must have been just the scariest time of your life. You know, wake up from probably a great night, next morning, you just bam, it's like on.
My thoughts really centered around the Arizona Memorial in contrast to Honolulu. I feel as educators, it's our duty to impart content with impartiality so that children can make up their own mind on what side to choose if they choose a side.
There's so many different learning styles. As educators, we are aware of that, to not just necessarily focus on the social studies or the history part of it. There's a lot of ELA, the English language arts, that can be in there. A lot of poetry can be written. Students can do their own artistic expression.
If you have someone that's older than you that's in your life, gather those stories now. And I think that's an important thing I'm going to bring back to my students.
That last story, the ranger shared with us, where the Japanese fighter pilot met with the American naval personnel guy, and how there was a reconciliation, and how we use this moment of tragedy maybe as a teaching moment. And so with that, I will turn it over to our guest, General David Bramlett. He has really become a student of the Nisei veteran experience during World War II. But even more than being a student of the Nisei veterans, he became their friend.
Believe me, that generation, those Nisei veterans lived for continuing service. Speaking of the 100th Battalion, we are honored today to have President Dr. Manago, a veteran of the 100th Battalion, and you all should consider that to be in the presence of these living legends. I was an infantryman most of my career, and so my admiration for what the Nisei soldier accomplished is born of my experience as a soldier. And to see and read and talk to what they accomplished, it's beyond the pale of my experience, but I can only begin to appreciate what they achieved. In the Army, we consider a unit that loses 30% to be combat ineffective. By the time they finish fighting at Sassuolo, they've had 40% casualties, but they fight on. This is a copy of the orders the 92nd Division commander put out. They will carry out orders without question. They will get up and move when you're told get up and move. And it's usually better to let them figure out how to do it versus tell them how to do it. Military Intelligence Service, they have labored in secrecy. Even today, they do not get the credit they deserve.
Our next speaker is someone who in Hawaii really needs no introduction. He's been here for 50 years, Tom Coffman.
In Hawaii, the entire population was held suspect by virtue of ancestry. A very small percentage of people were actually incarcerated. On the West Coast, virtually everyone was incarcerated, and famously 442nd members and MIS members were recruited from the concentration camps. Mobilization of the Japanese American fighting units was very much tied in to the American notion of what the future relationship between Japan and the United States was going to be. Pan-Pacific context is not something to be taken lightly, and one of my areas of research has been to document that.
What one or two lessons would you want these educators to pass along to our next generations about what's unique about Hawaii's experience during World War II as it pertains to inclusion and diversity?
You can't take this society for granted, and you can't take this community for granted, and you can't take tolerance and the maintenance of aloha spirit for granted.
We gather here today to right a grave wrong.
On August 10th, 1988, President Reagan signs the Civil Liberties Act, giving an apology and monetary reparations to those who had suffered the discrimination and the constitutional violations of World War II. We are very excited to welcome Carole Hayashino, an active member of the Japanese American Citizens League during the campaign for redress, and Bill Kaneko. He and the Honolulu JCL understood that Hawaii were not initially included in the legislation.
Japanese Americans who are living near Pearl Harbor or the Kahuku airfield, Lualua ammunition depot, military came in at gunpoint, displaced them, kicked them out of their homes. Well, how do you prove that? And the distinction between the eviction cases and the internment cases was that there were no lists.
And there was no playbook. We just became activists for reparations for this class of people.
Long story short, the Department of Justice actually created what's called the Special Verification Unit and was able to render a decision quickly.
I would hope that the lessons of redress is one of encouraging and inspiring young people to get involved.
The teachers enjoyed a final trip to the Royal Hawaiian Hotel that served as a source of rest and recreation for military personnel during the war.
The takeaways were many. There's a lot of hidden histories, a lot of information. It's not well-known knowledge.
These important times in history are, yes, difficult to talk about, but very important to remember.
These people could make something from nothing,
and that just amazes me.
To see more commonalities rather than differences.
I hope that our students are able to kind of see themselves in some of the history
so that they can connect it to their lives, the lives of their families.
The purpose of this project, right, is to make that history more well known so that it's not hidden, but that it becomes mainstream.
The training highlighted issues related to war, civil and constitutional rights, and human perseverance. These issues will go on to inform the teaching styles and curriculum of the participating educators. In doing so, school children of Hawaii can be encouraged to uphold America's promise, the promise that in our nation, no one is to be judged by the color of their skin, the nation of their origin, or the faith that they choose to keep.